Hey guys, welcome back to the Bronx Pod. It has been a minute since we have filmed, but we are finally back after our busy schedules, and we are honored to have three amazing guests here. So first I have communication professor Dr. Jessica Henry. I forgot your title changed. So you are the
Associate Dean
and
Communication Professor.
Kittie Grace. And then of course, the Institute's president, Dr. Lloyd. Thank you guys for coming on this evening. We appreciate you guys. We are going to be talking about a really hot topic right now, which is artificial intelligence and the involvement with higher education. So we felt that it was necessary to incorporate you guys and kind of get input to see what the next few years are going to be like now that AI is evolving and it is
a lot more prominent.
Yes,
Education.
especially in education. So kind of to start off, we're going to start with how should colleges address AI-generated work in the classroom? So for example, looking at ChatGPT essays or ChatGPT work. So kind of, if you guys want to popcorn or however.
I guess I'll start. I think this should be really left up to the professors. There's this whole idea of academic freedom in the classroom, and some professors might embrace it more than others or use it differently than others. And so one of the things that Kittie and I have proposed is that we need some more specific policies that professors can put into their syllabi. And those policies, some other colleges, the way they're doing it is they have different options that professors can use. So here's an option for a professor who says no AI at all. Here's an option for a professor who says, yes, some limited AI, here's when and how you can use it. And then here's another option for someone who's fully on board, this is the wave of the future, go for it. And so coming up with policies, but being flexible so that we can make decisions in our own classrooms for what we think is right for what we're teaching.
And currently, the policy that has been updated is our academic dishonesty policy. Dr. Bob Amio and I worked on that this last year and put that into place so that it identifies that any work that is not one's own can be flagged as dishonesty. But beyond that, we haven't required anything within the syllabi for how it should be implemented or used or not used. And so having those kind of parameters would be really, really helpful. Some have taken it into the syllabi, and I'm sure you've seen what that looks like in your different classes and everything. The one thing that we can all agree on is that if used, you need to say it was used.
Yeah.
And then we were just even looking at, there are articles now in journals that are identifying that they've used AI to help with the editing and the, making it more audience centered or whatever the case may be. And so in academia,
one of the psychology professors actually sent us an email and said, hey, I know you're working on this AI stuff. Look at this. Here's a journal article, and they actually have used AI, but they acknowledged it.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, so I think you both are going to be doing some work this summer. There's some innovation grants around it. So I think this entire year we've been in conversation about sort of where are some positive uses, where are we seeing benefits, let's do some trials. And then as always, right, we ask the question why, how is it appropriate, when appropriately used, how do we incorporate it going forward. So I think we're coming up with sort of that conversation. It will lead into some policies and frameworks, whether they're tight or whether they are more sort of open to appropriate use in a class given the topic matter or the subject matter. But that will get coordinated. So we're going to, that discussion is already underway. So Dr. Wayne Riggs, the academic dean, has said, let's take the pieces that each of us are doing and try to coordinate that in a task force for, what is the role of AI at Hastings College and how do we prepare students for a future in AI, because you have to be ready for it, right? We all have to be ready for it. Yeah, we all have to be ready for it. And so on the administrative side, we're already using it in a number of ways. And so I think, again, it's just appropriate use. How do we make use of technology we've had these intersections before in higher education where we've been in the same kind of room and, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with Wikipedia? You know, what are we going to do? We've been there before. We've come out the other side just fine. And so I think, again, it's just being in conversation with one another. But there are some areas in which I think we've already seen benefit. I mean, the tools are amazing at what they can do, and we also know they have their limitations.
Yeah, and I think it's important too to kind of get faculty all on board just because it is different with each professor. I had a professor, Kisi Malafua, he was on board. He's like, if it's there to help benefit you and expand your creativity, go for it. And then I had an ethics professor that was like, absolutely not. I will double check using other programs to make sure it's 100% because AI cannot, philosophize. So, I think getting everybody on the same page, I think will be really beneficial too.
Yeah, I would say it's been interesting in the journals, in the higher ed journals, and just the discussion. I think this is a good thing for Hastings College. Been talking to colleagues about it, that as we look at, having tools do tool work and humans do human work, one of the great things about our position as a liberal arts institution, it's going to be critically more and more important in the future. It's going to be those of us who are able to frame a question, to think about the right kind of queries, to ask the question, why? Why do we do it this way? So the liberal arts component of our educational experience is actually, in so many ways, colleges are thinking, well, is that even necessary?
Yeah.
I think it's even more critical that we're going to have those ethical dimensions of discussion and the conversations around it, and be able to ask the questions why. That's going to be the need. The tool's going to do the tool work.
Yeah.
The need is going to be our ability to think about it and ask the right kinds of questions to get the right kind of outcomes.
Just like, I remember when I was at K-State going to my first statistics class.
Yeah.
Whew, grad school, I remember my professor saying, garbage in, garbage out. That's what you're gonna get. And so that's what I can't help but continue to think, that if you're just going to use it and you're not asking the right questions, not putting in the right data, you're not going to get useful information.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what we're going to be working on this summer, is doing trainings for ourselves to then help others, the students and employees as well, to be able to learn how to ask those right questions, and hopefully help us all to feel a little more comfortable as AI is becoming a part of our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've lived with predictive AI for quite some time now. It's generative AI. I mean, this is sort of, oh my gosh, right? This is the new landscape. And so, but yeah, it can be a really valuable tool. It's just, how are we going to define the appropriate use? And
One of the statistics Kittie and I had come across was how many employers want students to be able to
Yes.
have AI skills
Yes.
coming out
Yeah.
of college.
Yeah.
And so it's, whether we like it or not,
Yes.
it's here to stay.
It's on the list.
We need to know how to use it, love it or hate it,
Yeah.
it is here.
Yeah. I mean, and you even mentioned in class as well that there are certain colleges and institutions that are making bachelor's degrees in
Yes.
AI,
yeah, majors have already emerged in
yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
which is already insane.
UNL has a
Just talk about-
certification program. UNO has the first Bachelor of Science in AI in Nebraska.
Wow.
I mean, colleges are having classes, micro-credentialing, workshops, things like that. So there's lots of
Yeah,
options.
prompting
For
certificates.
what we
There's-
can do. I even saw one where they called it like a boot camp. And it was like, learn all you can
Yeah.
about AI and little modules as quick as you can, so you don't get a degree in it or anything, but you get the skills, which is really what you need when you are in the workplace. You don't need a degree in
Quick and
AI.
easy, yeah.
They just need to know that you know how to use it effectively.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you'll see credentialing, stacking of credentials, certificates along the way, whether it's a degree or not, and then, certainly in specific areas within the work. So that's already emerging, and opportunities to jump on and learn. I mean, like we've done with Google and Excel
Oh,
and,
yeah.
right, just all those tools that are available to us to be helpful.
Okay, I guess we'll move on to the next.
This one's for you, Dr.
Yeah, this
Lloyd.
one's
Oh,
strictly,
okay, cool.
straight
Thanks.
to you.
Straight.
So what do you think, what role do honor codes, new assessment models, or AI literacy policies play in maintaining integrity for the college?
Yes, I think as Kittie has already mentioned and Jessica mentioned, that will be the work ahead of us is, what do we need to know, and then how do we frame policies so that there's clarity within classes. As Jessica has mentioned, there's probably some classes that might say, no, I want it to be more this design, and others might say, you do the building block work, and then let's incorporate I as another peer partner within the classroom, right? It's another conversation partner. So let's see what it says, and then we can do some comparison work, and then continue to refine, our own work. So I think that key is at this moment, who knows what the building blocks are necessary 20 years from now. But at this moment, it seems to me, after just teaching comp this last fall, the building blocks, and I use sports metaphors since I played a lot of sports growing up, but when I was trying to learn how to shoot a free throw, and I was working on my free throw technique, I'd spend hours, out shooting. But I was the one doing the shooting. Yeah. And then I'd go to a camp, or I would have my dad come out, or someone would come watch and say, I think your odds are getting better if you tuck that elbow in, or if you, look at the back of the net. So I would get, mentoring, and I'd get coaching, and I'd get an outside lens, but I was still shooting the shots. Yeah. So when I got to the game time, I couldn't call in the coach. I couldn't call in the device. I couldn't call in a tool. But the tool was there to help me get better when I actually had to produce that I had the feedback. And so what I told the comp students is you don't want to be the one not kicking the soccer ball. You're going to kick the soccer ball. Someone's going to help you with perhaps give you a better foundation, another way to see it, a building block strategy, but you still have to produce the results. So at the moment, at least in terms of writing, we tried to say, I want you to do the original work. You need to be confident. Absolutely. Once you know the rules, you're free to break the rules, is an old classic grammarian's term. Once I understand the rules of grammar, I'm free to break the rules, but I can't break them if I don't know them. Yeah. So, you use those building blocks, still do the work yourself, and then let's find the tools and the resources that can help you see it perhaps in a different way to get better. And so I think that's sort of how we think about what's ahead and how will we use it, where we'll not use it. There's some real practical applications. So, we're in meetings now in which we generally assign someone, and this is also on the medical side, my background in healthcare, running a healthcare college, but we'll go into a meeting and we ask someone to take minutes. When you're doing that, it's still productive work because you're listening, you're paying attention, you're recording what's happening. But you don't get to be an equal partner in the conversation, yes. Right? So all of us sitting right now here, if one of us had to take minutes, you both are in and you're out of the conversation. But all we have to do now is turn on voiceover AI, and this whole session is recorded and produced into minutes. And then all of a sudden, we all were conversation partners, and we didn't have to worry, did I catch that, did I not catch that? And then we go back to the minute release, and we just take a look, and then we edit it. Like, no, this wasn't accurate, we said this, nope, we nuanced it this way, this will be taken out of context. But we were all equals in the conversation. So where we're seeing lots in healthcare, but one of the amazing things we've seen with voice over AI and capturing AI is actually in physician work. So what burns out a lot of physicians and healthcare practitioners is actually the medical record. So when you go see a primary physician, it is supposed to be eye contact and conversation, get to know your patient. And that's why you're in healthcare. It's why you're in the field. And at the same time, within a 15 to 20 minute session, right, as you work through your day of constant patients coming in, at the same time, you've got to record in a medical record, you got to write medical notes because they have to be accurate, they have to be a clear record, and then you might be, putting in prescription notes and everything else. So if you think 20 minutes and half the time you're trying to look and listen, the other half the time you're trying to turn left. So one way we solved for that was to put a scribe in the room. We might hire someone who actually goes in with the physician. They take the notes because the physician wants to do physician work, not this work. Yeah. And now, if the patient agrees, because you have to acknowledge this, right, for HIPAA and everything else, but if I walk in and my primary care physician says, we're going to have this voiceover recorded, are you okay with that? And I say yes, then I get 20 minutes with my physician and that medical record is produced. And then the physician goes in and edits, right? We all go back and do the editing work. But now I've had a greater, deeper interaction with my physician than the note-taking. And I think sometimes we assume the tools are actually going to make things more impersonal, that the whole goal of the tool is to take us away from a shared humanity and make it more impersonal. And I would say in this case, it's done just the opposite. Yeah. The tool is doing the tool work. The impersonal work, the humanity work, the human work is now that I get to talk to you more. And so I think, we're just starting to see, and that's not, we've got generative AI and predictive running algorithms over healthcare patients and looking for better treatments because not all patients are the same, even if they exhibit the same diseases. So who's looking at the mass data fields to figure out how to do genomic therapies? So it's amazing what we can start to do and think about that lets us do more human things and be better at our human things. But I think we have to know what those boundaries are. So what are the guardrails and how does that work in higher ed? How does it work in other fields? And we're just sort of all there talking about it right now. And in any adoption phase of any new technology of anything, right, you just have an adoption curve. You have early adopters, someone who just says, I'm all in.
Yep.
And you have some people who are more cautious, right? I might get in the middle. I want to see how it goes, get the bugs out of it, the errors out of it. And you have some who are going to be more at the end. And that's in any adoption phase of any change management model. So I think we're sort of there, but the college is talking about it. I'm excited to see what colleagues say on all sides of it, right? Like all that input will be really, really helpful.
No, honestly, yeah, I'm kind of blown away by that answer. I mean, taking the interpersonal part and bringing back humanity and, personal conversation. And I think back to the example of, senior thesis and, getting experiences from female athletes and coach feedback. I mean, what you just said, it perfectly describes the experience because before I could have been so swept up on the nuance of how these women were talking about these experiences when it totally could have been conveyed a different way. But I let AI do its thing.
You said
and
you did use it, right? You acknowledged that in your presentation, that you used it.
Yes, I can be excited for these women sharing these experiences. I've cried with some of these women, with them, over these turmoils, and so it's just, I couldn't agree more. It brings back that humanity aspect without having to worry about being apart from that moment, which is so important.
Yeah.
Especially with any, seniors doing thesis work with participants or with anybody. Just, being present instead of, oh man, now I gotta get these transcript hours in, I gotta make sure that way I don't get docked off points. It's just, I think that's really important, at least for a student aspect as well.
Yeah.
But in healthcare, I mean, you couldn't have said it perfect.
Yeah, and then just replicate that across all fields,
Exactly.
right? Of all fields
Exactly.
where, so again, there's always the danger, right? Because then all of a sudden, in some cases, people would prefer the tool to do the human work and not, and so, yeah, I mean, that's always the case. But yeah, so in your research, right, you've got to be fully involved in the interview
the best.
and not have to worry about the accuracy of your note taking or bring someone along to do the note taking.
Exactly.
And then you could review those notes together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's really interesting.
But I think also, we have to negotiate when it's a good idea to use it and when it isn't. Because I also believe, I'm old school in class, you know this, I think students, and there's research that says students who take notes, actually take notes, they do learn the content more. If you just we use AI in class and it summarizes the lecture and you take the lecture notes from what AI summarizes, you don't, it's not striking your brain in the same way as if you were actually thinking about it and taking notes and organizing your notes. And I in that way, I'm old school. I can see, and that's why, when we wrote our grant, I literally titled it Love-Hate Relationship.
Right, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
because
love-hate.
I think that we really have to think through all of the implications of it. When is it, your example was a great example of when it would be useful.
Yeah.
But there are also times when AI should not be used, or we need to think ethically about how we're using it, or making sure people do the follow-up editing, which I think some people maybe wouldn't. They get the summary and they're like, okay, AI did it for me,
Plug it back in.
but they have to be able to still put the work in to do the editing or the fact checking too.
Yes.
In other cases, because
sometimes it is not
AI
accurate.
makes mistakes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's a lot of research that says it is not perfect. And one of the, in a lot of these training workshops that I've looked at, one of the modules is how do you do the fact checking and what should you be looking for and where do you go to get that information? Because if it's all about making it more efficient, if you spend double the time fact checking everything,
You could have gone to the original source at that point.
you can be trained to check AI in an efficient way and still have it checked. So it's, it's two-sided for sure, and it's not perfect yet.
I think that goes back to the let the tool do the tool work and the human do the humanity work, where you have to know, okay, what is going to be more beneficial for me in this instance? Like engaging in this conversation because it's one-on-one for research, yes, but for class, like to be able to absorb the information, maybe it's better to be engaging in the material as it's coming to you and not being a passive participant or just observer of it.
Yes, I think what we'll end up starting to see is multiple strategies for multiple ways in which people learn.
Yeah.
Right, so that note, right, absolutely. So how do we keep engaged in the classroom and the learning while it's happening? And then, when we saw this with Khan Academy, we saw this with video capture. You know, we saw this like, so what do I do afterwards? So now I could certainly have my own chat bot, and I certainly could just have the bot, you know, people after class just jump on and say, hey, I didn't get that concept, right? What was that concept you were talking about in terms of stream of consciousness in this novel? I just want that definitional term, and, you know, they can just go right to the notes. So, you know, we can do so we could also do interactive much. So I think it's gonna just be multi-factored and in a way that's most helpful and doesn't sort of say one has priority over the other, right? How best do students learn and how best do we create that environment for it?
And as we know, students learn differently.
Students learn differently.
So for
Visual
some,
learners, auditory, yeah.
it may be
Students
better
learn
to,
differently.
you know, have AI do the note taking because they can be engaged and they can listen more with the auditory. It just,
And some, I'm a note taker. I'm like Jeff, I engage more.
Like if you're doing like physics or extreme or I don't know, some biology class that's like super extensive with Dr. Solon, like I'd be so worried on the notes about catching all the information, because some professors just have all the information on the slide, so it becomes really easy just to lose the engagement and just focus on copying everything down, especially if they don't post them to Canvas. You're just like, well, I gotta get it all down.
You got it. This is my one shot.
This is my one opportunity.
This is it.
So yeah, I think in those instances where it's appropriate, it'll be nice being able to engage, and then that way the students can actually learn those harder, elements to the subjects that they're, learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a person that cannot take notes and listen like all at the same time. I have to be doing one or the other.
Yeah.
And so what I always do is just pay attention in class, and then afterwards on my own free time, just take all of my notes.
Yeah.
So something that always helps me is like recording the lectures while I'm in class, on Notability of the little like.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you've already got the tool to do that.
Shout out
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, if it's helpful to use AI in the future, figuring out, I know nothing about AI, to be completely honest.
That's
So
why
I
we're
never
having this
really,
beautiful
I
conversation.
never really used any of it to my advantage while in any of my classes. But I think if students could figure out the correct way to use it to their benefit so that they can learn, then I think it's, a great idea.
Part of our grant is for student training as well. It's not just for faculty training. So, and we've already contacted Dr. McDermott and then Kim Gravetti in Career Services, and just kind of heads up, can we coordinate and work together on this in the fall? Sophia's already doing a training this summer. She emailed me back, so she's already ahead of the game on this.
Oh, great.
And then Kim Gravetti said that Career Services already has it on their goals for next year. One of their top priorities is AI and how can they help students master this. She told me LinkedIn has some training.
They do,
modules.
They do have some open training modules, and I think some, I know Handshake also, I believe, does, not conferences, but some module training, video training as well for, students who are going in the career field and want to learn more about AI, especially when it comes to marketing or graphic design or things like that. So now that we've kind of been talking about it, let's just go ahead and expose that you guys got an innovation grant, by the way. Congrats. So, let's just talk about it. Yeah.
We just put together a little grant. It's for, Kittie had already mentioned, we're gonna be doing some workshop training, sort of a train the trainer model where we can be resources for people on campus. We got some money for faculty and staff to do some training, students to do some training. We're going to create a resource list, like a online resource document so people can find information easily and quickly. Just to kind of get us in the game of AI and get, especially for professors and maybe older ones like me, like who aren't super tech savvy, I think it's important that we stay, you know,
In the know.
you all are way better at technology than I am. And I think it's important that we stay as up to date as you all. And so, yeah, that's what our grant is about. We're excited about it.
What I found really interesting is that one of the foundation board members chose to fund it directly.
That's awesome.
And
That's
it's
really
an
awesome.
older foundation board member
Okay.
who was like, yeah, we have to do this, and this is really, really, really important because the jobs will be obsolete if we don't take take this and help the students to be able to learn and to help all of the employees learn. And so I thought that was really pretty phenomenal that there was such energy for this learning, and learning in a way that is, you know, notion of curiosity versus the black and white of it all. That it was very passionate, a passion project of hers, and
In fact,
that was
one of the board members asked us, like, is this gonna be something that you think should be required, this training?
Oh, yeah.
Required of everyone. That's not something we've really talked about, and
Yeah.
that wouldn't be our decision, that would be the powers above us, the decisions, but they were passionate enough about it, they were like,
Making
it should
it
be
required.
required of everyone. Everyone should do AI trainings like how we do, you know, at the beginning of the year, sexual harassment training.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, I think they realized this is important, this is the future, we have to be up to date.
Yeah. So will it be module based as far as training or like open workshops, especially when it comes to student training? What's that going to look like?
So we're gonna work with the faculty support committee on that. There's a committee already of faculty members who do workshops. They sort of assess the needs, like what kinds of training do the faculty need. So we're gonna work with them to kind of coordinate this. We really didn't, until we got the grant, we hadn't picked out specific workshops or training or anything like that. We really need to ask sort of other faculty, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you think you need? And that sort of thing, to figure that out.
And we have to make sure too that the way that it is taught allows for openness of acceptance for all disciplines and divisions, because it could easily get into a sense of ideology going a certain way, and we have to accept AI in this particular way, and that does not go over very well in an
Like your
academic
professor
setting.
who said no AI at all. They should be able to decide that in
In
their
an open
classroom.
supportive space, yeah.
Yeah, and I think just from that work, what we're going to see, and you mentioned career services, so our workflow for the college for next year, just the workflow priorities, every area has got an AI strategy inside of it.
Okay.
So just, you know, let's have a conversation, what's happening in your field from admissions to career services, just so that, yeah, we're prepared and start to see, you know, be able to ask the right questions, what's available, what's not. Last thing I will say, because I talked about a really effective use of AI in terms of like you've used with conversations. As an English professor, I'll flip it around and say the biggest concern, it's a large language model. So it's pulling from existing work. So the work came from somewhere, and people own that work. It was their intellectual property, right? They wrote that work. It's now in a large language model that it's pulling from as it learns. And so that intellectualness of you pull it down, and even if it's sort of helpful in a way, you're taking someone else's work,
Yeah.
right? You're pulling from someone else's work that it's absorbed in this large language model. And there's just that tension of like respect for that intellectual property, respect for the author who created that work, you know, that is now just being consumed as if it's coming from somewhere else. You know, it originated somewhere by, in most cases, by an author who deserves credit.
Yes.
And has ownership. And I think that's the challenge of sort of where is this ambiguity, this space of intellectual property. We often have sort of rules like, well, if I wrote that work, it's mine, everybody knows it's mine. But in this sort of other realm, it's like, well, how do you know where it pulled from? And,
ChatGPT is not sourcing your stuff.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
And
so I think
students
that's
don't
the
understand
challenge, yeah, is that
Yeah.
sort of, and you want to be respected for your own intellectual property,
Yeah.
for the work you do, you want to have respect for that. And so the people, that's sort of like, okay, we extend that respect out, and then how does this fit within that kind of model of respect?
No, I can agree. And yeah, going back, I feel like students aren't aware that it is pulled from other people's work, and ChatGPT does not have the time, nor do they want to cite those academic works. So if you are using ChatGPT, just know that you might be taking someone else's intellectual property. So
Yeah, Gemini and others now have a deep research tool. I mean, they're all
Yeah.
emerging, and then that will give you all the sources, right?
And-
That'll
yeah.
pull how you query it, but it's just still it's just
Yeah,
still
it-
this
yeah.
interesting space.
One other thing that I think is important to mention is that sometimes efficiency is not always the best, because
Yeah.
struggling, think of your capstone paper. Right?
I turned it in.
Done,
literally.
done,
Hand it
done.
to me like
Brain.
this. Ta-da. And
I
think
love
of the struggle and all of the work you put into that, and how proud you were when you handed it to me today, right? Versus someone who just generates something. Yeah, it's
There you
quick, it's efficient, it's probably good if you generate it using AI, but it is. You don't learn the same. You're not as proud of it. You're not as
Yes.
committed to the, your product was important to you.
Yeah.
What you
I
were.
literally said it was my baby. Like,
Yeah.
this is my
And
child.
don't get that
No.
same feeling and that same learning when you're using AI.
Although when students may feel burnt out, that may be like their resort, it is not helping the creative aspect and the critical thinking aspect when it comes to writing higher, academic papers. And that's just the reality of going to college. It's going to be harder. Every college professor has said that.
Oh, yeah.
College is going to be harder. Even high school teachers say it's going to be harder. So you have to learn how to individually, critically
Create
think
your own
and create your own work.
work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you guys are stressing is important, and especially in the English realm, I believe,
Yeah.
is really important, because like you said, there's people who have spent decades of work, writing these papers and creating these theories and doing the research, and a 15-year-old can go online and just steal it like that. And I think, in some aspect, we need to be engaging a little bit more.
Yeah, I had a student one time years ago, similar results from this last semester when I taught, but was not a very effective writer starting out, and we worked really, really hard. And the goal was to, pass the class with a C.
Yeah.
I mean, there's writers who are going to get A's, right? And you're just like, great, just keep writing. But this student, was really struggling, and finally produced a paper that got a C. And when I gave him back that paper, and I said, you stay after class, and just told him how proud I was of him. It was a legitimately earned C. He just welled up with tears and said, no one expected this of me. No one thought that I could do this. Kind of first generation student, went to college on his own. No one thought I could make it. That C was more meaningful to that student that they earned, that they did the work and earned. Now, today, right, someone could just drop it in and say,
Yes.
like, see if I can get it by Professor Lloyd or not, and maybe they get it by and they get a C. But to Jessica's point, there's no validation of that. Like,
No.
I did this and I earned
No
this.
sigh
and
of relief when you
just
turn
know,
it in for
just
your
know,
senior thesis.
just in,
No.
and then to that again, it's the building blocks. How you high jump, right? It's
Yeah.
it's then I now know what it took. I know
Yes.
the time and the effort and the steps and the sequencing to go from here to here, from D to C.
Yeah.
And the perseverance.
Perseverance and
the
grit.
editing
Writing
and the
college
constant
papers
revision.
is so hard. Writing is so
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And
And then so proud when someone says, "That's really good."
Yes.
Like, that was a great presentation. Yeah. So that validation comes from doing the work, not having someone else do it for you.
Exactly.
But then there's still another. But there's a peer out there who now can also help. But they shouldn't. Yeah. So that's the tension.
And yeah, juggling that will, obviously be forthcoming in the next few, years as you guys implement these different trainings and these different
Yeah.
workshops and getting everybody established with AI. So the next one is, Zailee, you take it on this one.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Sorry.
So this is straight to Dr. Grace Henry. Is AI a challenge to traditional teaching rules, or can it enhance them?
Yes.
Done. Next question.
No, next.
absolutely. It's getting all students to understand the importance of that resiliency, of the grit, of the, hey, this is why you're here, to learn, to be creative, to understand that you can make decisions of what classes to take without your parents telling you what to do. Like, you know, let's have some separation and have them own a little bit more of who they are. And so that's part of that tension, right? So that's the, oh, you need to be able to do this for yourself. And so as we're, you know, trying to navigate these spaces, being able to help students know that we're their champions and we are the mentors to be able to help you to make those good decisions, and not to just do the easy way out and find an easy resource. As far as like, you're talking the job taking over, etc. I think there's a lot of good uses. I don't have to spend nearly as much time trying to create a new rubric. I can just say, hey, these are the criterion that I'm looking for, develop that rubric, and then modify it. But when you know the information and you put that in, I mean, so it can help with the how to decrease the amount of that excess labor and have more time actually connecting with students. That's what I think is going to be phenomenal. I really, really hope that our future is very focused on our liberal arts skills that you learn, and so as they become more and more important, and it's not so much the 1 + 1 = 2 sort of information that comes through, then our liberal arts schools will become more impactful for our future generations, because it's not just the putting the info in and getting out what it is. It's that creativity and that important critical thinking that you can't get from a generative device.
Absolutely. We just kind of have a couple more. I was going to say, you guys have really hit a lot of these, especially with examples of the Innovative Grant, as well as, again, trying to foster a soon-to-be community that understands AI, hopefully. So my next question, this can kind of be like a turntable as well. Examples of how faculty are now going to use AI to save time, improve feedback, or foster student creativity. So, can you guys think of examples?
I personally don't really, I guess I haven't talked to anyone who's using it beyond trying to catch the students cheating using AI, like using Turnitin.
Using AI to
Using an AI to catch it. Using AI to catch an AI.
I was going to say, isn't like AI checking? I was going to say
AI is checking on AI.
Yeah. But you know, we haven't had these spaces, because once we start having these workshops and we could have lunch and learn sort of things where we're having discussions about this, then maybe we can learn from each other. Like, hey, maybe there's some younger, newer professor who's using AI, and I'm like, wow, that would be a really great idea. Or sort of ironically, when we were putting together our innovation grant presentation, Kittie's like, I'm going to use AI to generate our slides to prove sort of that you can, how you can use AI. And so, I think doing something like that would be a time saver, using, I mean, if the point of the PowerPoint slides is to get information out to the students, do I really need to spend hours like designing them when, I don't know how long it took you to do it using AI, but
5 minutes.
5 minutes, and they were beautiful slides, and all of the information was there. They looked great. It would have taken me a very long time to make it look like that.
But it was your input.
It was our input.
That's the difference. Your inputs.
Move this
your
into
inputs,
slides.
put it into slides.
Yeah,
use the tool.
But
Right.
graphically,
Yeah.
they looked really good, like very professional, and
Now, they
students
were personal, though.
Ah.
So that was the thing. So as we were moving, like, where's the Hastings College aspect of it.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
we had then switched it, and it moved beautifully to Google Slides, which I wasn't sure.
Oh,
So I
okay.
learned something new. It was like, oh, this works nicely. And then we were able to get images of our student work that made it way more.
A lot more
And we
more
edited
personal.
them,
Just to make
added
sure.
things, added a slide. I mean, it wasn't like she generated them and
And that's what we went
Yeah.
with.
you know, we still edited them. But, so I don't know what people are doing right now, to be honest. I think hopefully next year we'll start sharing ideas
Yeah.
for what we're doing with it. I don't know.
I can say I like to have dean's meetings with my husband because he's associate dean at Central Community College. And so we'll do dean's meetings at First Street Friday afternoons often. And we talk a lot about the use of AI
Yeah.
and especially with the making those rubrics and helping, especially some of the newer faculty that he has to oversee, like that they don't necessarily know how to build a rubric. Like they know
Yeah.
how to weld well, but they don't know what that looks like as far as a learning objective.
Yeah.
And so putting in, like, this is what it looks like, and then adding those objectives, oh, okay, that makes it a lot easier. For letters of recommendation,
Oh,
it
yeah.
works definitely beautifully. You put in all of the info. You go back through it and you make it,
Yeah.
your own,
But you kind of get
have
like
the
a
right
bone
info.
structure, and then you can add in all the organs and all the,
Yep,
all the fun stuff.
exactly. So I think those are a couple of different ways that I've used it besides, minute taking and those kinds of things.
What about you, Dr. Lloyd?
Well, I was going to see if I could turn the question around. There was an interesting article in the New Yorker where a professor asked the class, like, what, at the moment, because we're assuming, like, we're the ones who need to get caught up.
Yes.
And that students are already sort of engaging in AI spaces in multiple ways. And we open our phone, we got it right, everything. We're always in AI spaces anymore. But that in the classroom or in there. And what was interesting is then the response to the professor from the students was, well, we really haven't touched it yet because we don't want to be accused of not doing things right,
Yeah.
right, of
Yeah.
violating a rule. So we've tried to not look like we've touched it in a way. And so then the professor found that sort of interesting that, we've created a space in which it's fearful to touch the
Yeah,
new
it's
technology because no one wants to be accused of anything. So sort of wondering, like, well, what is the student experience with AI outside of like our classroom experience? What is the expectation of students from their institutions, from the college, from their professors, and what is your experience with it?
Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go.
In my experience, I was always terrified to use it because I was always like, I always thought I was gonna get like caught and then get, accused
Or
of plagiarism
expelled.
and then get like expelled or something. So for any work that I was turning in, I didn't
Sure.
touch it.
Sure.
But for studying, I used it this whole year. Like,
Yeah.
so I would take any of my notes that I had already taken and I'd put it in and like create a study guide for me, and then I'd use that to study off of. And so that was super helpful for me because it kind of simplified the notes I had already taken, and put together stuff like if I had written down the same thing many times or
Sure.
whatever, it would just kind of simplify it. So that was
Yeah.
really, really helpful for studying, but I was way too
Got
scared
it.
to touch it,
Of course.
to turn anything in. So,
I would say so far it's been positive. I know when I was interning here at the college at OMC, in order to become a more strengthful writer, my titles were never that interesting. I had very boring titles. And so Carissa, she was like, you could always just like, mess around with AI to see what kind of fun titles, and if they also suck, then you can change them too. So that was kind of a cool experience to see, if my writing block was like serious, I'm like, okay, I need a cool title. I just wrote this whole bio about this awesome student, and I have a lame title. I need this to be cooler. So that was a cool experience. But as far as like studying, I think it helped in certain classes just because you had like kinesiology and like more terminology
I could
studying.
use like flashcard type things.
So with
for
mine, it was mostly like theories that have been developed since the 70s and 90s, or even Marxist theories. And then in my ethics class, there were I can't even remember because I was so like traumatized. But it was just like these super extensive theories by these, great philosophers way back, and I just could not grasp it. And I would ask peers, and I'm like, I'm trying to teach myself, and I was hitting a block, so I'm like, can you explain this in simpler terms? And make me an outline of like some key terms maybe so I can understand, and that seemed to really help. And most of the time, if I wasn't understanding something, I would just ask and be like, define this a little bit more simpler, because, and my professor, she was amazing, and she is really good at philosophizing, but I just don't have that mindset. So it was really hard for me to grasp this new sense of how to think when you're, going through education. You're like, okay, we got to think this way, more academically, more structurally. And she's like, maybe it could be like this, or like, what about this alternate reality? And so being able to relearn was super beneficial, and especially for some theories too. Like for our class, we had to teach a theory, and so I got to choose my theory, and I kind of made like a lesson plan for our slides, because it's a theory from the 90s, and there's so many different approaches to the theory, and I didn't want to sit there and bore my peers for 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm like, give me something interesting that, uses the gender-like theory that students can be interested about, or what are some relatable topics for Gen Z students when it comes to theories like gender-like. And that's how we came up, with like the office themes, or, relationships, or online social media relationships. So it was coming up with ideas like, wow, I didn't even think of that.
Sure.
Really kind of helped, get your brain going again. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like that makes sense. So in terms of organization, and also like developing like the lesson plans, that was really helpful. But, in some cases where I'm not a philosophy student and I'm learning, new material for the first time, it helps kind of break it down so that a simpleton like me can understand these big concepts. So I found it to be really helpful. But when it comes to my papers, I'm like, check this for grammar, because I use too many commas. So that was also nice too.
Yeah, that was a big thing that I also used, because I'm, an exercise science major, and took I think the last writing class I took was freshman year. And so writing, my research paper, I'm like, I forgot how to write completely, because I haven't had to in so long.
What is grammar?
Yeah, and so I had to put it through a couple, people read it for one, and then I put it through a couple sources just to see if I got everything right, because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was very, very helpful with the editing side of my research paper. But
One of the sources, when Kittie and I were looking up research about this for our presentation, one of them said 86% of students are using AI academically now. So it's, this was last year, so
That's-
it's from
wow.
last year. So it's probably even higher now,
Probably.
within last year.
Yeah, well, and now that a lot of these programs are offering college students free admission, because with certain programs you have a certain, I believe it's prompt numbers. So for example, ChatGPT gives you, I think, 6 prompt numbers in a day, right? If you don't have ChatGPT Pro, then you have to pay X amount of dollars. Well, they just offered that college students can use it for free if they use their email, and you can have as many prompts as you want. So I think that's also a little something to, think about, that, it's going to keep increasing, and if they are offering, students to use it for free, unlimited, and they don't have to wait 24 hours to figure it out, then that's something to also kind of note.
yeah.
But
Yeah, my son, so almost 2 years ago now, when ChatGPT sort of first came out, and I got an email from him. He was teaching at Brooklyn College in New York, and he just said, Dad, this is going to change everything. And his master's is in philosophy, his PhD's in literature, and so coming at it, and he also is a coder. And so, he was sitting like, I'm playing with it just to say, like, how would I ask a question in class? So if we're taking 2 texts and doing a traditional comparison and contrast essay, and he said, I threw in, like, compare this to this, like nobody would ever even think to make that an argument. He said, it gave me something. Now, it didn't mean it was good, didn't mean it, but it gave him something. And he just said, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
And we've sort of been talking about it ever since. But yeah, he just said it's here. So it is certainly a game changer.
and like you said, it's here, and it's here to stay.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere, I don't think.
And one of the other statistics that we found is that it's a number of younger students still don't feel comfortable using the technology.
And
Like, they may use it, like, you know, the 87%, but I think it was a 51%, were still like not comfortable in how to use it, or didn't feel confident in the use of it. And so I do think that your experiences helped to be able to show that both sides, like, okay, I feel comfortable that I can use it when I'm studying, but I don't know how to approach it within an actual class.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't had any training in how to use it effectively. It's just you're learning by doing it.
Yeah,
Well,
by
yeah.
literally, trial
Well,
and
and,
error.
and the
yeah.
risk beyond intellectual property, if you're not doing it in a closed-looped internal system, like within a college system, but you're doing it just out there, and you're putting in sensitive data because you're asking it to help,
Yeah.
you may just have violated everybody's confidentiality.
Yeah.
So I think there's also just this sense of like, well, if I just type it in, like, where does it go? And I want to, run some queries across statistical data and I didn't identify the boom, there it is. So, that's not helpful either. So, I just think, we've got to keep thinking it through.
So kind of honestly, like wrapping up, I think we've had a really good discussion, and I think it's hopeful for college students and for faculty. So we're going to kind of leave off on, what are your guys' hopes for at least like the next 4 years, or the next incoming freshmen, going through their next 4 years of college. What do you hope AI can do for them, or an AI can do for faculty and for Hastings College?
What I'd like to see is our policies be clear so that when students are in a classroom, they feel comfortable and confident knowing how
Yes.
they can use it. And then I would love to see more workflow. I love efficiency. It's beautiful. And if AI can help with some of that so I can have more relationship connection, that is what I would love to see.
I mean, I think learning collaboratively, that students, faculty, we can learn together.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to be me teaching you in class. This is going to be,
Yeah.
I'm just as behind as you all on this, right? We're beginners at AI too, so I think we will all be learning this together as a community, which I think is a great experience for all of us.
Yeah. I would just echo the same. I hope that whatever adoption across the campus, and I think about it from the administrative side, similar to what Kittie has said, that if it frees up, if we find a way in which it can free up our time so we can spend more time together, then that would be, for me, a really meaningful goal because of the kind of education and a community of learners that we desire anyway. So the more that we can be in community, less that we're doing tasks, I think it's a good thing.
I love that.
Boom.
That was mic drop. Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
that was a
Absolutely.
great conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited as we graduate this year. I think it'll be exciting to see what you guys do for the community and
Yes,
for
absolutely.
the faculty as well. So,
Yeah.
other than that,
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely, anytime.
Take us away, Zailee.
All right, so thanks you guys for joining in today and listening to the episode. Subscribe,
Share.
share it wherever you
And
like.
if you have input, DM us if you'd like. Do you want AI to be here, or what are your guys' opinions? Let us know, and we'll see
Yeah.
you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.